This is the place to find yourself.
Istanbul offers great universities and the lifestyle is really amazing here.
So I live at the dorms at Maltepe University and I'm really happy with it. There's a cleaning service every few days and then there's the library nearby which is open 24/7.
My first impression when I came was like, it's huge. You have everything in one place.
When you first come to Maltepe University, you don't know where what is and you're like, oh my God, I need help. Guess what? You're not alone. There is the international office people over there. They're like family. They're very helpful and they're always there for you.
Istanbul is the perfect mixture between ancient and modern. Coming into this city helps me discover myself, learn about so many different cultures, learning about the world, which will help me in writing future books.
At Maltepe University, we have a lot of research centers. Because of that, we have the ability to participate in a lot of international projects.
Here at Maltepe University, the education consists of both practical and theoretical. We get the opportunity to practice everything we learn in class in real life. So after we graduate, we have a degree and we can work all over the world.
People come to Istanbul all the time, but what they really miss when they visit are the antique shops, which contain thousands of years of memories and also a thread of the modern future.
I like to use every minute and just get out and hop on the ferry and just go from the Asian side to the European side and just enjoy the wonderful weather with the wonderful Bosphorus behind me and just enjoying the moment of Istanbul.
Istanbul is very beautiful with great culture.
This city is the symbol of diversity. Come and study at Maltepe University.
Come here and feel like you're home.
Hello everyone, I am Ilayda. I will be the moderator of this session. Welcome to the second session of our Congress. If you have any questions about the presentation, write them in the comments section. When the presentation is over, I can pass your question to the presenter. And now I'm inviting Anastasia to give his presentation.
Okay, I will share my screen.
Okay.
Can you see it?
Yes, we can see. Everything's okay.
Yes, my topic is educational journalism during COVID-19 pandemic. And I want to talk with you about educational journalism in general at first, because we need to understand what does these terms mean. So to talk about educational journalism, I used to learn a lot of different sources, and one of them told that for educational journalism, a term of pedagogical information and pedagogical press are very important. So we need to understand what is the pedagogical press and what types of information does it learn. So the pedagogical press, it is a section of journalism that covers two types of information. Firstly, information that is related to the educational system and learning process, and secondly, information that encourages educational and learning of the public. And there is some sources that I used to learn, that I used to explore, to talk with you about educational journalism characteristics. Yes, this is evaluated educational magazines. I used to learn two types of pedagogical press, from Russian and from Kazakhstan. There is some articles from pedagogical magazines for 219 and for 221 years. So we need to understand what topics they used to learn, what topics they used to cover, to understand the difference between pedagogical press for 2020 and for 2019 before COVID-19 pandemic started. I have done some conclusions after exploring, and first of this it is about amount of publications and about distance education. In 2019, the information about distance education was less than 10% of the volume of all issues of the magazine. But in 2021, it may up to one third of the full volume of the every issues of Pedagogical magazine. Second conclusion was about pedagogical press content changes. In any case, all pedagogical materials and publications can be grouped into the following thematic groups, like the news and issues of education, materials for teachers, public education materials, and guidance materials. So there is a difference between publications for 2019 and for 2021. So we can see that in 2021, information characteristic changed. Now it is a lot of information about distance education, about relevant education, and we need to understand that before it was like only a small group of publications about distance education, like a specialization. But now it is an importance, it is a half of life of every peoples that use it to learn now. And it become like a habit to learn by distance. Thirdly, it is about content characteristic changes. As I told that educational journalism was everywhere and everywhere, but now it has a new group of publications that covered distance education and its different areas, like changes in education system with static distance education, questions and problems of the distance education, distance learning life hacks, like using different programs. For example, in Kazakhstan, we use 3 basis programs for distance learning. For example, it is Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and Moodle learning system. And advantages and disadvantages of the education system. These 5 basic aspects becomes basic for pedagogical press after starting of COVID-19 pandemics. And there is a ratio of the various publications from magazine for this year, and you can see that the biggest group it is publications covers news and issues of education, and another 3 groups are a little bit less. And finally, the fourth conclusion was about problems of distance education. So after exploring a lot of different magazines and its publications, I can told you some most important problems for the teachers, students, their parents, and another people who faces with these problems during distance learning. For example, these problems is inability to learn or teach remotely, and some problems with the programs for this process, deterioration mastery of the material. For example, when people sitting in the class with the teacher, it is easier for them to understand something, but when they didn't see any teacher or see it in their computer screen, it become harder. became harder. So some lack of discipline and other difficulties of distance education in primary school became another problem. So we need to understand when we talk about high school or when we talk about university students, it is simpler to learn them to learn for them distance, and it is easier for teachers to learn them by distance. But when we talk about younger peoples, it is very hard because they have some problems with discipline and some problems with sitting in their house because before they do it in their schools. So there is some another problems like system errors of different learning programs, difficulties associated with returning and gathering complete homework, because we have some problems with when we take after we have done our homeworks, but we can't to give it to our teachers because it is problem. But schools in Kazakhstan are not very good at distance educations. We have some problems with doing our homework online, so we need to do it as usually in our papers. Then we need to photo these papers, and then we need to send this photo to our teachers. So if this problem was solved very if this problem was solved after not after some time in universities for students, but for younger classes it wasn't solved for a very long time. And some classes, some younger peoples in our country are still need to send their homeworks like after photo it, and then send it to as a photo to their teachers. So we have some problems with United National Tests in Kazakhstan, and in Russia they have some problems with Uniform State Examination, that some students, that some people must to write after they finish their school. So it is a problem because we need to try to have to take distance between some people. So it is a problems. We have these problems during the quarantine. So we tried to make it online, but it wasn't very resulted. So we tried to do it for a more longer time. And if before it takes, for example, 1 week to a lot of students write this test for a week every day, now we need to share for it two more time, for example, like 3 weeks. And a lot of students, a lot of school pupils that before can write it in 1 day, they need to come different days, different days, to be not to not make some mess in the places when we took this unified national test. So in Russian they have the same problems because they need to write informed state examination too. And this is my full conclusions. It is for the basic 4 conclusions that I make after exploring a lot of different pedagogical press. At first about the publications about distance learning, and the second is the nature, like character of these publications about online education. Thirdly, changes of content in pedagogical press. And this fourthly, the devices of distance education was also explored by reviewing a lot of pedagogical articles. So I hope you understood me. That is may I finish sharing of my screen?
Thank you for the presentation. And now I'm inviting Hedwig to give his presentation.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen, hopefully. This one. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, everything's okay.
Okay, thank you. So, thank you for your introduction. My name is Hedwig Specht. I'm from the University of Pécs, from Hungary. And in the next few minutes, I would like to share my research with you, which is part of my doctoral thesis. So the broader context of this research is the internationalization of the higher education. Internationally mobile students are not only economically significant for the university and for the city of Pécs, but they are also adding color to the institution and the city with their culture. My research on these students can help the host institution to understand students' everyday life and the difficulties in the host country, and to learn about the social networks will facilitate the communication between the university and its students. So approximately 4,700 international students studied at the University of Pécs in the academic year 2018-2019, of which 1,420 participated in the diploma mobility program. This second number didn't change drastically in the last year. So the situation of the students is very special, as they have to navigate their everyday life far away from their home, not only in their academic life. They have to adapt to the changes in their everyday life brought by mobility, and when they arrive in the host country, they face a number of challenges in addition to the homesickness, emotional difficulties caused by moving to a foreign country far away from home. Cultural and linguistic differences can intensify, and they need to find solutions to housing, administration, and of course, sport and cultural activities. So the circumstances that I just described largely determine the first months of the students coming to the University of Pécs. However, the outbreak of the pandemic in the first quarter of 2020 made life for everyone harder. I think international students had to face even more difficulties, negative experiences in their everyday life. Moreover, I have to add, a small group of international students were identified as the first infected people in Hungary, and the Hungarian government had a really, really bad and negative propaganda against them. So this is what made the life of international students harder. So the aim of the questionnaire-based quantitative research was to enable the widest possible range of international students to report on their experiences during the initial period of the pandemic. And the focus of the questions was on the following aspects. You can see on the slide what difficulties these students faced during the initial period of the pandemic, who could they turn to for help, on what platforms, with whom, for what purpose did they communicate, and how did this help to overcome their problems. And how did these difficulties affect their motivation for higher education? Would they continue their studies at foreign universities after the period they have gone through? So the online questionnaire was completed by 221 international students between the ages of 18 and 43. There were diploma and credit mobility students, and more than the half of the respondents were women. The majority of the participants were BA students, and the duration of the student stay in Hungary ranged from 3 months to 12 years. More than 3/4 of the students had already studied Hungarian during their time at the University of Pécs. So let's speak about the results. I identified 3 main difficulties, which you can see: mental health, online education, and communication with the university. So the first one was lack of personal contact and mental health. During the pandemic, lack of personal contact, loneliness, homesickness, especially for students living alone in an apartment, led to emotional lability and mental problems, with nearly 2/3 of subject marked this as the biggest difficulty. Many felt very insecure about the situation, which resulted from being locked up in a foreign country away from their families without knowing the language of the country, not receiving any adequate support from the epidemic situation, and living their daily lives in almost an apocalyptic situation. As you can see there, these are the answers they gave me. I think it's not fun. It's really really bad. But one student wrote me, it is an apocalypse movie without subtitles. Yeah. So the second problem was the online education. So 2/3 of the students thought that they had learned less since switching to online education, and 20% thought they would like to study in this form in the future, and online education is as good as offline. But students felt that the university not only did not pay enough attention to maintaining mental health, but they also suffered from discrimination during online education. It has been a phenomenon for years in Hungary. The students are discriminated, left out of the flow of information at the university, and are separated from Hungarian students. Online education by the online education, I could identify or find three main areas, problem areas, like the motivation. They didn't feel motivated. It was really boring, and anything else could distract them from the learning. Then the second was the lack of personal contact. So they missed the opportunity for teamwork. The third one was the inadequate technical infrastructure, which was really stressful for them because in exam situation they couldn't do their work so good. And the fourth one was that they just mentioned that online education is good for the theoretical subject, but it's not good for acquiring practical knowledge. The next main problem was the communication of the university. As you can see, I'm sorry for the language, but it was so by the answers. So many students wrote about the communication of the university. The responses were clearly negative about the university's communication, but we should note, however, that most of the time those who are satisfied express their satisfaction less, in contrast to those who have problem. What is the solution? What did they do against pandemic or this situation? As can be seen in the exploration of the problems, that lack of personal connection and isolation cause most of the difficulties in the everyday life of the students, which is also reflected in the responses to the problems. The most of the students marked music, and then social media, cooking, sports, games, and hiking. And although only half of the students indicated that social media use would have contributed to overcoming their difficulties, it can be seen that 80% of students reported an increase in media use. Of course, online education may have contributed to this result, the platform of which was mostly Zoom and Microsoft Teams at the University of Page. But if we take a closer look at the media most often used by students and the motivation for media use, differences can be observed, and I'm going to show you the differences. So during the lockdown, in terms of students' motivation for media use, was entertainment, contact with family, friends, university. These were the priorities. In addition, there was an even higher rate of learning and information gathering on COVID-19. So it's clear from the results that popular platforms and applications such as YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, or chat services such as Messenger, WhatsApp, Telegram were popular by international students. The use of online teaching tools such as Microsoft Teams and Zoom, as you can see, was also observed. In the media use of international students, it can be observed that the chat applications used by international students, they were not the same like by the Hungarian students. So we can see that that they use them with the home, with the friends, with other international students, but not with Hungarian students, which is very sad. So to summarize these results, I can tell you the results of the research, how that international students are a vulnerable group who have faced particularly difficult challenges during the pandemic, and the effects of the difficulties still affect their daily lives, their everyday life, and determine their thinking about higher education in the future. So in my opinion, it is our task, or it is a task of the university, not to leave the students alone in this situation. And in the possible next wave, we should support them more. As we have seen, communication was often unsuccessful because there was simply no common platforms on which to implement it. This was mostly determined by the preferences of foreign students, but there was some cases, for example, for Chinese or Iranian students, where the platform used by the university in the sending country was simply not available. So if we want to help them, I think we have to know our students, we have to know their communication channels and networks in order to find the right way to communicate with them. So thank you for your attention and that I could share my research with you.
Thank you for the presentation. I thank them for their presentation and their participation in our Congress. I am finishing the second session of our Congress. We will take a break before the third session of our Congress. Thank you for joining us. See you in the session 3.